Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to Wasteland, my weekly show where we take a deep dive into a particular film. And this is quite an interesting one in the filmography of Steven Spielberg as we talk about The Terminal. And I have here my good friend Aaron, but not that Aaron.
Hi.
Aaron, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here, man.
And would you like to shamelessly plug anything before we get started?
Let's do Twitter and Letterboxd at Schweitzer, STH White Castle, like the glorious restaurant that serves you the best kind of food to eat when you're intoxicated.
Especially in New Jersey.
And I have two podcasts, SiftPop Writer's Room, and then I recently took over the Behind the Scenes podcast for Cinema Sins.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks. It's been going, I think episode 5 releases tomorrow as of recording, so it's been
awesome.
It's pretty fresh, but yeah, it's fine. It's fun.
That's good, because if it wasn't, then why do it?
Right.
So,
right.
And also, Aaron has one of my favorite names on social media, so I appreciate the Schweitzer. So,
nice. Thanks.
But for those who have not tuned in to Welcome to the Wasteland before, very interesting choice here on the Terminal episode. But we have 3 segments on this show. We go over coming attractions, and this week is October 7th because it's October already.
Woo.
So, and then we have coming attractions, and then we have our feature film, and then some recommendations for you. It is the season. This is not a horror film. In my mind, it was a horrible film because the only time I saw this film before this past weekend was when I was 13 years old when this came out. And I wanted to see Shrek 2. My brother wanted to see White Chicks. And my aunt who took us to the movies like, just kidding, we're going to see The Terminal. So by default, this wasn't Shrek 2. So then it was the worst film in the world. So
naturally.
Before we get into that, figured I'd throw in that little story. But this is an interesting weekend because we have 2 big wide releases, 2 award contending kinds of films coming out limited release, and none of them in New Jersey. Already checked for this weekend. I'm not happy about it because I'm like, I'm ready to dive in some movies this weekend. Nope, just kidding. Gotta settle for Lyle Crocodile. And also a pretty interesting Hulu release, which is one of the ones we're going to talk about, which I guess we could start there. So, Aaron, What interests you in Hellraiser?
So, I have absolutely no history with the Hellraiser franchise. I've never seen any of the movies, and I don't intend to. They don't have a good rap, and I feel like it's iconic status, but iconic because of the character, not because of the movies. My entire experience of Pinhead is playing against him in Dead by Daylight. So, and people don't pick him all the time, so it's a very limited experience. So there is something here that keeps me intrigued in seeing this movie, and it's the director choice. I don't know the director off the top of my head. But the director made one of my favorite horror movies of the last while. He made The Night House, which came out 2 years ago, which is a film that I really respect and really appreciate. And so look, I'm not excited because of any reason that anybody should be excited about Hellraiser, that you think about it, right? I'm excited because I really respect the director, and even though it's not a household name yet, I think he will be in the coming years to horror fans.
Yeah. David Bruckner, who did The Night House, had the Netflix film The Ritual, Southbound, and was part of the original VHS anthology film. So Night House was something else. And here's the hoping that this could even capture even a fraction of how much that movie, because that movie scared the crap out of me. And fun fact, I was by myself in a 300 plus seat theater on a Friday afternoon watching that, and that was unnerving to me. experiencing that because like I'm like looking at this giant theater around me all by myself. I'm like, nope, I'm not in a good place right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And are one of the two kind of like awards kind of films is Triangle of Sadness. So what interests you in this one, Aaron?
I know nothing about this movie, except for what you told me about it right before. Like Woody Harrelson's apparently in this. All I know is this is one of those movies that's just getting around the festival circuits and is coming away like as one of the most talked about films. So it's one of those that naturally I'm excited to see. It really kind of has energy of like a lot of A24's really good, because kind of like they premiere something, they pick up a lot of buzz, and they don't stop. It feels kind of like maybe like The Lighthouse, which is ironically a movie I really didn't enjoy. But it kind of has that buzz going for it. Maybe something like The Father from last year or from 2 years ago. It feels like or maybe Drive My Car would have been a good example from last year, like making a lot of these awards just incredible press releases or incredible reception at the festival circuits. And just it's hard to ignore a movie like that. So I don't know anything about it, but when a movie gets that much buzz, it certainly has piqued my interest.
I was going to be seeing it tonight, but unfortunately that did not happen because COVID still alive and kicking. Unfortunately. But this is from director Ruben Östlund, who is a Swedish director who directed The Square, which I haven't gotten a chance to see yet. But that film has Class Bang, Elizabeth Moss, Dominic West, and Terry Notary in it. And like I've heard really good things about it. And that was like a big release back in like 2017. But really for me, it's Woody Harrelson as a captain of a ship with a whole bunch of super rich people on it. Just sounds like, yep, sounds like my kind of thing. I'm gonna enjoy this. It's also 2.5 hours long. And Tar, the other awards film coming out with Cate Blanchett's 2 hours and 38 minutes. And I'm like, what? So that's about a composer. So interesting. But we do have 2 wide releases this weekend too. And Lyle Crocodile is definitely not was anticipated. But I am, and I have been for a while, a fan of David O. Russell as a filmmaker. David O. Russell seems to be a piece of shit. But in terms of like a filmmaker, it's like I've enjoyed his work. I think I enjoy American Hustle a lot more than most people because I'm like, this is a great movie when that came out, and then nobody was like, except for the Academy Awards, who gave it like
I think 11 nominations and no wins.
Didn't win a thing. But like Silver Linings Playbook was a big thing. And then Joy happened and he just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
And then he's back. And I'm like, this looks crazy with the ensemble here. And despite the fact that it's getting atrocious reviews, Christian Bale, John David Washington, Margot Robbie, Rami Malek, Anya Taylor-Joy, Taylor Swift, which I don't really care about that. Robert De Niro, Mike Myers, Michael Shannon, Matisse Schoenaerts, Timothy Oliphant, and Chris Rock, and just the ridiculous amount of people in this movie. And the trailer, I enjoyed it. So I was pretty excited about this between the ensemble and like what O. Russell's done with other ensembles. But it is sad to see that it's getting like horrible reviews. So I don't know. But were you excited about this one, Aaron?
Kind of. I mean, when you have a cast this big, it's almost like, how could this movie not be good? But then again, like House of Gucci happened. So
House of Gucci.
It's one of those. I never saw it, but like, that was intentional after all the reviews came out, and I feel like Amsterdam's gonna be that. Like, I'm interested in a murder mystery. It's hard not to be interested when there's a cast like this. You mentioned David O. Russell does seem like a giant piece of shit. But he's made some good movies, and I kind of feel mid on American Hustle. and I never saw Joy. I have no interest in seeing Joy. And Silver Linings Playbook is a delightful film that is
Yeah.
just wonderful. Yeah, I know Three Kings is fine. It seems to have a lot of love for it, but I think a little undeserving. It's fine. It's not great. Honestly, maybe the thing that has me most excited about this movie is just simply Timothy Olyphant, because he is, I don't know why he's not widely recognized as one of the best actors working right now, because he is. So
I feel like he's playing a similar role, it seems, to what he was doing in Fargo. And
okay.
And that makes me happy, because
I've
like
still only seen the first season of Fargo, so
he was in the 4th season of Fargo.
Okay.
And interesting enough, Chris Rock was also in the 4th season of Fargo. But from what I understand, Chris Rock is literally one scene in this movie and sticks out like a sore thumb.
Okay.
Based off of some of the reviews I was listening to. But, I feel like, and I was surprised this is only 2 hours and 10, 2 hours and 15 minutes, because I was expecting this to be like over 2.5 hours.
Yeah, studios are starting to get okay with 2 hours and 45-minute movies,
Yeah. And to be honest, what really grabbed my attention, like, oh my God, Mike Myers is in this with Michael Shannon. Seeming like they're some kind of, because like, to be fair, what's this movie really about? Don't know. And I'm gonna find out when I see it this weekend. But those are some coming attractions for you to start off October. Maybe one of these will save the box office.
Maybe. I don't know.
Kids don't have anything else to see. They're all going to drag their parents to go see Lyle Lyle Crocodile.
I mean, I still haven't gotten around to seeing Barbarian. I want to do that. I need to see Bros. I mean, there's plenty more I'm interested in seeing this week that isn't coming out this week.
Yeah.
So
I was one of 5 people to see Bros. So you're welcome for your $4.8 million. I was part of that. But nice. It was a really good movie. It makes me really sad that like nobody saw it, but good for Smile. And it's $22 million, and it's absolutely disturbing cinematic experience that I had watching that, because, oh my God, that terrified the hell out of me. Was dumb in some ways and poorly written, but still terrifying. Something that's not terrifying is The Terminal. Wonderful segue. And yep. Perfectly timed. And this is a 2004 comedy hyphen drama from Steven Spielberg, which this is a very interesting change of pace after doing things like AI and Minority Report and even Catch Me If You Can. And this stars, of course, Tom Hanks, who is a man who comes to New York on some kind of mission. We don't really know, especially towards the beginning of why, but a military coup happens in his country, dissolves the government. So now he is stuck in limbo in a terminal at JFK. And basically this whole entire movie is this Tom Hanks in an airport. And all the other people around in this airport, including Catherine Zeta-Jones, who is a flight attendant that he developed some feelings for. You have Stanley Tucci, who is evil runner of this airport, keeping Tom Hanks and stuck up in here. You have Zoe Saldana, you have Diego Luna, fun little early roles, I think, for both of them. And of course, Janice Kaminsky and John Williams are back doing their thing. And, John Williams is doing his most Eastern European sounding score that you can for this movie. And this was partially inspired by the true story of an 18-year stay of Mehran Karimi Nassiri in Terminal 1 in Charles de Gaulle Airport in France. So apparently somebody spent 18 years living in an airport.
That's crazy.
That is insane. This movie definitely was not 18 years, but it was months. And, this film... it's just Tom Hanks, an immigrant man, living in an airport and making friends. And Stanley Tucci trying to stop him at every turn. But Aaron, what interests you in coming on for this particular episode?
Yeah, I mean, when you first said, "Hey, Spielberg's up. What do you guys want to talk about?" And like, look, it'd be so easy to be like, "Saving Private Ryan is one of the best movies ever," and Schindler's List is one of the most important movies ever made, and or to get a movie that like I know and love, something like Catch Me If You Can, or um, uh, Ready Player One, or I could have taken a million options, Jaws, Jurassic Park, but I considered taking a movie that, um, especially with Spielberg's filmography, I wanted to pick something that was like on my most like a watch list that I have,
Mhm.
as well as something that I figured like there's probably nobody chomping at the bit for this. So I decided to go with The Terminal, because I had a couple options, but I feel like this was probably the one that intrigued me the most, because I've also seen this movie when it came out on DVD. I saw it
Mhm.
once, and I had fond memories of it, but it's not really a movie that I was 9 when it came out. So it's not really a movie that like a 9-year-old wanted to watch again. But I was like, I feel like I would enjoy that as an adult. And I feel like it's one of those like forgotten movies that everybody really liked, but apparently not enough. So um yeah, it was kind of one of those where I was like, I feel like I want to give this movie another shot, and coming on the podcast will be a great way to give me an excuse.
And I was looking forward to checking this out again too, because I wanted to know did I judge it too harshly as a 13-year-old,
Mm.
which to be perfectly honest was probably yes the case. Because also I was mad because I didn't get to go see Shrek 2. But like this is the kind of film that it really rides on the shoulders of Tom Hanks. And like if you didn't have somebody who you could really invest in this movie, I don't know how connected you'd feel sitting there for like the 2 hours plus, because this is a Spielberg movie, so it's over 2 hours of hanging out in this airport. But I guess, Aaron, what were some of the things that stuck out to you most about the film?
I was just thinking about that, and you said that this movie kind of essentially lives and dies by Tom Hanks, and my immediate pushback was I think actually this movie more so lives and dies by the supporting cast. I think both are true. I think both are equally as important. I mean, we spend more time with Hanks, and we need to like this guy. We need to not have a reason to side with Stanley Tucci. But like I'm thinking of like this movie was it was just instantly captivating, because it just seemed like quirky and fun. First of all, the very first scene gets you set up for what this movie is. It takes no time doing any setup, doing anything. 10 minutes in the movie and you're already into it.
Yeah.
But like by the time that he starts interacting with some of the people, like it's not that long, but you can see, you've kind of got an understanding of who he is, but now you get an understanding of how he interacts with some people. And
Yeah.
like especially I think my favorite part of this movie is where Diego Luna is trying to get him to hook up with Zoe Saldana. Sorry, not to get him to hook him up with Zoe Saldana.
Yeah.
It's just charming, and it's cute, and it's like we get to see how he actually is. I mean, at first it's just like he's just happy to have a meal, but like he's genuinely excited every time to go talk to her and to help out his friend. It's just that, and then you develop the relationship with the janitor, and then the guy that's hosting the poker tournaments, and
Yeah.
like, by the end of the movie, like he's got all of these people that like adore him, and like you understand why. It's just charming.
Yeah. Charming is definitely the best word for this film, because that's really what this really anchors on, is that you feel the magic of this situation, and we all fall for the charm of Hanks's character, Victor, and you just feel connected. And Kumar Palena, who plays Gupta, is great in this film. And he has one really big moment towards the end of the film, and it's just like that it's one of those kinds of things where like, is it a little over the top?
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like, I feel like most of the third act of this movie is pretty over the top, but
Yeah.
you know, it matches the tone and the charm of what the movie's going for. Because like, this doesn't try to be like a super hyper realized, like realistic version of life. It's a wonderful little love letter to this man and his experiences and the power of making human connections with people. And even at this time, like Catherine Zeta-Jones was like up here
Yeah.
at that point, and like just the two of them interacting with each other, I really enjoyed a lot. I think they had great chemistry. And Hanks, like, this is gonna sound weird because like it's hard to not see Tom Hanks, but I felt like he really like kind of disappeared into it. Like I felt like he was really believable as this like Eastern European man.
It's all right. So it's interesting because like I think a really good comparison for this movie is Castaway, um, because it's a lot of that like kind of person who it's Tom Hanks who is kind of out of his element and is forced
Mhm.
to survive in a completely new set of circumstances, at least for the first half of Castaway. But during Castaway, the whole time you're just like, that's Tom Hanks. But you're right, he kind of dives into this role. He has this obviously fake Russian accent that is adorable in a lot of ways, and it never is never over the top like Malkovich and Rounders, but like it's clearly like, oh, we're going for a fake Russian accent, but we're gonna make up a country, so it's okay. um
Or like Lady Gaga's Russian accent in House of
House
Gucci.
of Gucci, yeah, man, didn't think we'd be referencing House of Gucci twice here.
Boom,
um
there it is.
but you're right, he absorbs himself into this role, and to the point that as opposed to Castaway, where I'm frequently going, yes, that's Tom Hanks.
Mhm.
It's easy for me to forget that. Yeah, I mean, that's Tom Hanks is one of the like most recognizable actors in the world, and it you're right, you forget about him, not you forget about him, you forget that you're watching Tom Hanks. um
I and what I love about this character too is because from the start he's kind of just like a blank slate, but then you slowly through his actions and his interactions we get to learn his characters. There's not a lot of exposition that's like laid out for us to learn who this man is. We see how resourceful he is from the very start when he rigs together those two sets of seats and makes a bed for himself. And like you see that, and then you see him taking over the construction job that's going on, and like he does an amazing job with it. And you're like, he must actually do this for a living or something, because like some random skills there. And you get to learn more about him with his interactions with Catherine Zeta-Jones and Kamar Polena and Diego Luna, and uh, you get to feel those connections with this character, and you even get to see him kind of stick up for himself at times. I love the part where he realized that he get money for returning the carts,
yeah,
and then starts like dropping fistful of change at the food court, and so like you can finally eat some real food.
yeah, they're like commenting in the security cam like, oh, he figured out the carts.
Yeah, and
And
okay.
it's it's one of the things that you mentioned it, but how he starts off as a blank slate, and I think the movie does a really interesting job with that, because I think we're supposed to have the mindset of somebody in the position of like the Stanley Tucci or any of the like lead security guards. I think that's the person that we're supposed to be viewing this from,
Yeah.
because here's this person who we know nothing about. He's from a foreign country and he doesn't speak any English. He doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't understand anything that you're saying to him, and you have no idea what he's like or what his intentions are.
Mhm.
And so they just observe him, and they at one point set him up to, so they can transfer him to a prison, or at least to a different airport. And he outsmarts them, but it's one of those where like You're right. We see them like investigating him and essentially observing, and it's interesting to like observe
Yeah.
because you're right, as we observe we kind of grow, but it makes another big problem for the movie though, is I don't understand why Stanley Tucci just decides to be a total jerk to him the whole time. Like,
Yeah,
I think the movie is supposed to say that he is frustrated that he is still in his job as opposed to like a higher job, or at least a higher paying job. You know, when he finds out that he's making $19 an hour, which, by the way, the head security at the head of security and customs at JFK would be making well over $19 an hour. Like, but um but I mean, adjust for inflation and still he's making at least double that. Probably triple, but anyway, and JFK is a much bigger airport than this movie like makes it out to be. But the like, I think we're supposed to get the idea that he's frustrated in his position and he's taking his frustration out on this one thing where he can really exercise power and feel like a big man. But it's not ever super clear, and I never really understand. Like, I don't know. Like, I maybe get why he's trying to set him up at the beginning, just so he can be like, "This is a problem," before it develops into anything. But when he starts collecting the carts, I'm just like, "Okay, cool." Like, they probably want somebody to do that anyway. Like, now, like, they're getting it for free, and then the scene where they hire somebody to do it, like, it just breaks your heart. And then just every little thing, he just comes along the way to try to snuff out any hope that he has. And I'm just like, you know what? At this point, like, I don't understand this character. He's just bad guy for the sake of being bad guy, and I want all the bad things to happen to him.
Yeah, it's one of those kinds of things where you just have to have this suspension of disbelief. Like, that's the thing. It's
like
just
most of this movie.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing about this movie, is that like it, like, obviously it's apparently loosely based off of a true story, but like, this is so unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, it is such a crazy setup. And then even with like the whole thing where he's like, admit that you're afraid of your country and you could go.
Yeah.
Are you afraid of your country? No. And it's just like
well, and it's so funny because he's telling him too, he's like, you don't have to even be afraid of your, like, you could be afraid of anything, whatever, Uncle Sam doesn't care. And then after, he's like, no, I love my country, I'm afraid of ghosts, I'm afraid of clowns, heights. And I'm just like, write that down, you just said he has to be afraid of something. Get him out of there.
And that's the thing too, because like, we start off the film with our perception that he's just like some kind of like ignorant like man who's just stuck in the situation, and like, he plays games and he can play back. And like, oh, the one scene with the guy in the medicine, one of the, like, I think the single most powerful scene in the whole entire movie, and also one of the scenes that has the most to say about society and how we just, this should have been called Bureaucracy in an Airport, the movie, and with Tom Hanks. And that scene, though, there's a level of emotion there. And like, you could feel the power play that Victor's throwing out there. And you're just like, respect. And like, we could connect with him, and like him trying to find a loophole to get around Stanley Tucci's rulings and stuff like that. It's fun to watch that like cat and mouse game throughout the thing.
It is interesting to see that, how it plays out. It feels very. I was reminded of Catch Me If You Can a little bit during this movie, partly because of, you know, Tom Hanks is also in that movie. But it does kind of feel a little bit like that, in terms of like, here's a cat and mouse situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, that scene is that scene is easily the best of the movie. At least in terms of like, you're right, it means something, it's suspenseful, it manages to still be funny in moments, and I think the same is true for the rest of this movie. I remember thinking of The Terminal like as this like this movie, especially by the trailers, like this movie that is a drama, like just kind of this situational drama, and then that's
Yeah.
just kind of the way that I remembered it. But as I watched it, I think this movie is primarily a comedy. It's secondarily a drama and a romance, but like there is so much funny stuff in this movie. Like you mentioned the Indian character, and how he on 3 different occasions asks if he has an appointment, and it's funny every single time. It's it's especially the third time where he's out on the track tarmac and he's do you have an appointment? It's great. It's so it's so funny, but there's also again seeing him figure out the carts, and then there's he figured out the carts, and he goes up to Burger King and pays 76 cents for a Burger King, which you can't do at any Burger King, let alone in an airport. So I don't know. That doesn't work at all. So so the seeing him do that and then say keep the change, and again the scene where he's just like, no, I'm afraid of ghosts, like there's so much funny in this movie. And with the end of the scene where he the guy with the medicine, and his hand gets on the Xerox, and then like every business has the handprint up there because he's got this whole like mythology behind him now, and even to the point where he finally gets to leave the airport, there's still like handprints posted places. This is such a funny movie.
Yeah, it's surprisingly funny, and I feel like it's one of that's where like in the third act of this film where it just really felt like this feels like some kind of magical realism or fantasy kind of thing, because it never once feels like this is the real world, but it's like this whimsical, fun environment, and Kaminsky does a good job with the cinematography capturing that, and just the wonderful, warm score that John Williams layers throughout this whole entire film.
Yeah, the score was really great too. I noticed that. And you're right. He channels a lot of Eastern European, but he also channels in a lot of jazz, and especially in the second half of the movie. And I thought that was really special when you find out why. So,
and the scene that you find out why he's there, that got me. Like Catherine Zeta-Jones acting in that scene got me, and it's just like. And it's unexpected, and I appreciate that. It's not like I came to find like my wife or something like that, or something. It's something that you wouldn't guess, and I appreciate that about this film too. And it comes together and delivers a great final scene and great final line. It's like, because the thing is, it's like, what's so crazy about this, and this isn't a story about like an immigrant. Like this is a guy who's visiting and stuck in this airport for all of this time is insane. And I know you mentioned like this ensemble is so important too, and it really is. And just Catherine Zeta-Jones is so fantastic, and even like the little romance that goes on in this film, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed their back and forth in chemistry at this point. And, it's just such a fun ride from start to finish, even though like it feels like a movie at like most of it. You are fully aware you're watching a movie.
Yeah, the movie never quite lost me in that because like it is so prevalent. And I mentioned my favorite part being the Diego Luna and Zoe Saldana stuff, but especially like he asks her to marry him, and then but it's like she has no idea who he is, and then next season they're married, and you're like,
but it's romantic.
All right, movie. I'll suspend my disbelief because I love it and I wanted this to happen anyway. So, in terms of the romance, though, I do have one. I have 2 negatives about this movie, and one of them is maybe it's because I literally just finished the movie before hopping on this call. But one of them is I'm not sure how I feel about the ending of the movie. I mean, I think the ending as a whole works, but the ending specifically between him and Catherine Zeta-Jones, like I never suspected that they would actually wind up together because, with him wanting to return home, I could have believed this movie would do something where they would just say, let's just get married and now you can have a green card and you can, live here. I could see something like that, but I didn't expect this to be the actual route that the movie went. So I just kind of expected them to amicably part ways, but they part ways in a way that I ultimately don't feel like the Catherine Zeta-Jones character has grown throughout the movie at all. And
no, she hasn't.
And that's a problem to me because the characters can grow and you can still have them make bad choices, but she hasn't grown in the slightest, and she's had all the opportunity to grow. And ultimately, I think the message for her character is that people don't change, which is anti every other person in this movie. And honestly, is I think bad messaging. So because her the thing that she wants to change about herself is a thing that I think most respectable people would agree is a harmful trait. She is willingly a third party in an affair of a married person, and knowing what she's doing and rooting for the marriage to be saved. And she can't shake this trait. And it's one thing if you want to say like people don't change because like I have a soda here and like I hate drinking water and so I'm never going to be a water person. Like it's one thing to like say people don't change in that regard, but people don't change in terms of like bad behavior that they know is bad is just especially when the rest of this movie is so like upbeat and inspiring and hopeful. I don't know how I feel about their ending.
I feel like, and I don't even know what I would want out of the ending. I just feel like how this ended with that romance just didn't click for me.
Yeah. Again, I don't know. I think honestly a worse ending is they get a green card wedding, or she decides to move to discount Russia. But I think I think either of those are worse options, and I think I don't know this. I don't know the right way to write her character off other than just for her to say like I know what to look for in a guy now. But like she's not doing that. She's still hanging and banging the married guy. Like it's frustrating. Maybe that's just the better ways for her to just say something like the next guy is going to be you. Is going to be a guy like you. I've learned how I should respect myself or how I should respect others, or I know what it's like to be treated right now. So I should do, I know what to expect the next time. So maybe that's that. I feel like that's the best way to try to end it. But also my only other complaint about this movie is it's probably like 10 minutes, 15 minutes too long.
This didn't need to be over 2 hours.
No, it could have been a little bit shorter, which is odd because I also feel like the movie tried to accomplish so much that I almost felt like there's a mini series worth of stuff in here, because like as soon as he doesn't need to get food from Diego Luna anymore, like there's no more Zoe Saldana for like an hour, and it's just like, oh, that's sad. I want more of them. So it feels like this movie is a bunch of different vignettes tied together, which is upsetting. But ultimately, the movie could have been a little bit shorter. It's not a big issue, but it is a little bit of one.
Absolutely.
15 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, if they just kept this to like 2 hours, I think it would have been fine.
And
get over that.
I don't
take 2+ hours.
Yeah, and man, let me ask you this question: is the movie better, like ending with him leaving the airport and Stanley Tucci just choosing not to pursue him, as opposed to actually seeing him go to the jazz club and all that? Or maybe just we see a shot of him, having the last signature and putting it in the can, like as a quick like, hey, he got this signature, he's going home, we know what's happening. Like, because other than that, the last 10-15 minutes, I mean, gives us some beautiful moments, but like, doesn't doesn't say anything.
Well, and I like the scene of them driving down like that big street, and they're like, where are you heading? It's like, head home. And like that, I feel like works so well, like that line, that exchange, but also
it could have just been tied in. Where you headed? I'm headed home, and he puts the name in the jar, and that's all we needed.
Mm-hmm. They could have done that. They definitely could have, and I think they probably left it in so like we actually saw him meet the person, kind of thing. So like we have that experience.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and it's delightful. It's wonderful. It's charming. It's just by the time that he gets to the club, I'm almost just like, how this movie should have been over by now. Like,
yeah.
So
I get
anyway.
That. But I guess, Aaron, do you have any other last thoughts, comments, anything you wanted to bring up about the terminal?
I do have a question, or maybe a rhetorical question. Apparently, I don't know if it was a fake article or not, but I saw an article that said that Tom Hanks really only says there's about 4 movies that he's really loved in his career.
He said, I've only made like 4 films that were any good.
Yes, yeah. So, and I only know that because somebody quote tweeted and said, "Bet you it's Toy Story 1, 2, 3, and 4." And
yeah.
I really wonder what those 4 films are, and I wonder if it's 4 that like would surprise people. I mean, I think Tom Hanks has brought so much to so many of the roles that he's been in. I mean, Saving Private Ryan and Catch Me If You Can, and this movie and the Toy Story movies. Plenty of different. Won't You Be My Neighbor? Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. That's the one. Plenty of roles that I think he's just been magnificent in. I like to think, or at least I like to wonder, if maybe The Terminal is one of those 4, and maybe it's because like this is a movie that 18 years later nobody has talked about in 17 years, and that's kind of a shame because this movie is better than that. So I wonder if it's one of those, you got to think like as a celebrity. I'm sure people go up to Tom Hanks all the time and be like, "Oh, I loved you in Saving Private Ryan. I loved you as Toy Story. I grew up with Woody and all these things."
But Terminal.
Like, do you think anybody has ever walked up to him and said, "I love you" in The Terminal? Like, Castaway, I'm sure would have been one. Now I'm going to conjecture for the rest of my life what the 4 movies are that Tom Hanks was referring to, and a part of me kind of hopes Terminal is one. Just one of those like secret gems that nobody's talked about from his career.
Lady Killers by Coen Brothers, definitely one of them. There you go. You heard it here first. Tom Hanks' favorite film he's ever done, Lady Killers by the Coen Brothers. And you should go back and check out my episode of Lady Killers for
there you go.
The Wasteland. Shameless plugs all around. But this is a sweet, charming film, and if you haven't seen it, give it a watch because I think it's worth it.
Absolutely. My wife has been. It's Wednesday now, and we haven't been able to watch this episode of House of the Dragon yet, and so it's been one of those that like we're constantly like she wants to watch it so bad, and she was so excited to watch House of the Dragon when we came home from work. But I'm like, hey, we got to watch this movie. It's called The Terminal. It's about Tom Hanks stuck in a terminal. And she's like, all right, I would watch that. I like Tom Hanks. And the movie ended. She's like, I'm so happy with that. I'm not even mad that we didn't watch House of the Dragon. So like, it's
still well worth a crazy episode to look forward to.
Yep.
So
tomorrow.
Now, getting into our final part of the show, which is recommendations. So, Aaron, seems like you have a spoopy recommendation for people just in time for the holidays.
Of course. So I was sick this past weekend, hence the coughing. So I decided I wanted to do this anyway. I figured what better time than when you're sick. I want to get through the Halloween franchise. I want to get through the Friday the 13th franchise, and I want to get through a few of the Nightmare on Elm Street films because I've never seen any of them. So I've seen some of the Halloween, and I've seen like the reboot from Nightmare on Elm Street, but like that, I wanted to watch like a lot of these like classic considered horror films, slasher films mostly. And so I I'd already seen the original Halloween 3 or 4 times, and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm not sure how long this is going to last. I want to get through Halloween 2 and just get as many as I can done. So, as of right now, the last one I've watched was Rob Zombie's Halloween. So I've seen all of them, 2 to Rob Zombie's Halloween, and which makes Halloween 2 the only film I haven't seen. Anyway, and also I wanted to get through all of them before Halloween Ends comes out. Yeah. And there's only one that I really want to talk about, and it's Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. I really enjoyed this movie, and I enjoy it significantly more the more that like I've distanced myself from it. I think part of that is because it's immediately followed up by 6 mediocre to bad Halloween movies, so it's kind of like the last like good one until 2018. And so I'm just like, man, like I'd rather watch Season of the Witch again than Michael Myers 4 or whatever. Definitely over like Curse of Michael Myers or Rob Zombie's Halloween or Halloween Resurrection. Oh, that one's actually kind of fun.
2-0.
Right. So like, but I genuinely think, first of all, ever since I found out, which was a while ago, that Season of the Witch was intended to be the start of an anthology.
Yeah.
Like I thought, honestly, I think this is an ultimately better direction for this franchise. I really would be interested in a franchise called Halloween, where you have things happening on Halloween night, different filmmakers, essentially like short form American Horror Story.
Yeah.
I think would be really interesting. But Season of the Witch works really well. I think the leads are convincing. I think the setting is convincing. It has a very Soylent Green kind of vibe to it. And I really dug it. Like I knew where the story was going. It's pretty clear pretty early on, and yeah, you know that this company is up to something sinister and this guy's going to figure it out. But like it was thrilling throughout. It was an intensity, not so much like a horror. And it has a really intriguing ending. And I think I prefer the ending that apparently it originally was, and they cut it a little bit. So I guess I could spoil it here. Apparently the original ending was the film continued to go a little longer, and then you would hear the screams of millions of children. So the third broadcast was never cut. And then it tested poorly. The ending tested poorly, so they cut it a little early to make it more ambiguous. And I'm like, no, I'm going to choose to believe that, because I think that's a really bold, ambitious Halloween ending. So like, anyway, that's just my thoughts. I think Season of the Witch is great if you haven't seen any of the Halloween films. You find to just watch it, and if you're like, I don't really want anything to do with any of the other Halloweens besides the original, like Season of the Witch, absolutely worth your time.
Yep. And if you haven't seen the original Halloween, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Go check out that John Carpenter classic. Now, I have a couple of recommendations here. So I rewatched this film for this. This is my second watch, and talked about this with Robert and Rowan on Rowan the Wasteland, and that is About Time. And it is a tender and sweet film of romance and father and son relationships and manipulating time. And it is such a delightful film. I absolutely loved it to pieces, especially the second time around. I didn't have to the moment contend with like this film is just so sweet, and love Donald Gleason in it and everything. And I know Rowan and Robert, like, this is up there for them. So it was and Aaron. And I feel like it's going to be one of those kinds of films that I watch each time. I'm going to love it even more than the last time. One new film that I saw is Bros, and I feel like this needs a recommendation because apparently, according to Billy Eichner, those straight people didn't show up. And you know what? It is a hilarious movie. It has a good message. It's a well-done rom-com. And there's every reason to go check it out.
Yeah.
You don't have to be gay to enjoy Bros. And if you take that sentence in a different way, that is interesting. But you do not need to be gay to enjoy this film, Bros. and Billy Eichner's hilarious, and him and Luke McFarlane, I think it is. He apparently is like a Hallmark Channel and like Netflix Christmas movie actor, and like they have great chemistry together. And also they have a running gag about Hallmark movies. Hilarious. One of the funniest in jokes I've heard in a while in a movie. But my last one is, and I'm doing a special classic review of this film with Adam on my channel, The Truman Show. And before you go see Don't Worry, Darling in a theater, watch the better version. And that's The Truman Show. And I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to give away too much of Don't Worry, Darling, even though it's mediocre, I feel like, at best. At least Truman Show doesn't have Harry Styles in it. It has Jim Carrey, who's amazing, and Ed Harris, who's amazing. And honestly, like Noah Emmerich, too, gives a really good performance in this. It's a great cast. It's such an amazing idea and is way too biting and too true in so many ways. And even up to the final thing where it's like, oh, well, let's look up what else is on. Just click on to the next thing. And that's human beings in a nutshell. But if you haven't seen The Truman Show, it's a great film. I love that film. Peter Weir doesn't get enough credit for being such a great director of Dead Poets Society and this and Master and Commander. Just really great direction, great story, great cast and everything. But those are some recommendations for all of you. So hopefully you leave this episode with plenty of things to check out. But Aaron, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I had a good time.
And Aaron will be back for when we decide the next director.
Welcome
to the Wasteland, which will be next year.
Is Tommy Wiseau still in the running?
Huh?
Is Tommy Wiseau still in the running?
No, the troll didn't work. But
next time.
Actually, now that I have you on here, so if he ever does wind up being chosen, I have an idea.
Okay.
He has one film that he's directed, and is The Room. And because everything else he hasn't actually directed. So he directed The Room. I'm going to set up multiple recordings with different groups of people and edit them all together.
No, not yeah.
So there will be, like, my wife and our friend Paige, because I feel like I have to have them on. I have my movie club. There will be special convening of the movie club to record our thoughts on The Room. There will be a SiftPop group, which I could only imagine will have you and Robert and Rowan and hopefully Foster and
Frank.
It has to have Frank. Frank has to be there. And anybody else I can get. My Scribe Magazine people, my Filmstagram people, just edit it all together and have one giant monster episode of Welcome to the Wasteland for The Room.
Nice.
So there you go. If it ever happens, Aaron, this is your fault. And this is going to be there.
I'm so here for it.
So, Time of Wiseau is not in it.
Next time.
Guillermo del Toro did almost knock out Tarantino.
Man.
In the second round, missed by one vote. Fincher beat Denis Villeneuve by one vote. And right now, Ridley Scott's beating Taika Waititi by like one vote. It's getting interesting. It's getting close. I look forward to one of the matchups is the Shamhammer himself and like Shyamalan versus Hitchcock.
Shamhammer. Nice.
He might actually win. I could imagine enough people wanting to talk about his movies because, Last Airbender. I need Frank and you and basically like the Eyes Wide Shut crew for either Last Airbender or After Earth because I won't be able to get through it.
Oh, I've not seen either of them.
Oh, I've seen After Earth and I fell asleep 7 different times in an hour and a half. You know why I fell asleep 7 times? Because my drunk wife wouldn't let me sleep through the movie. She needed me awake to complain to me about how terrible it was. And I'm like, just let me sleep.
Amazing.
It was that boring.
Amazing.
That boring. But anyway, thank you so much, Aaron.
Yeah, of course.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.